What's going on? This is another episode of the Mike Styles Experience, and I'm back with another episode. And this time I wanted to talk about operating on a different frequency in life. I sat down and I started to think and reflect on my day as usual. And the more I thought about it, I realized that many of us are not living our best lives right now, myself included. We're not living up to our potential, and that potential is to be better versions of ourselves. And just like I always say, it's a work in progress, and it doesn't happen overnight. The truth is that we have the power to change our realities. Nothing is ever set in stone, and just because you feel or think one way today doesn't mean that you have to feel or think the same way tomorrow. Change is the only constant in life. We can live better, we can do better, and we can be happier. And I think the best thing about it is that we don't have to wait. We can do it at any moment. And I wanted to talk about frequencies and how it relates to our lives. I had a birthday yesterday, my 38th birthday, and I want to thank everybody for wishing me a happy birthday. It was very much appreciated. And for me, it was a moment of reflection. And I started looking back at how far I've come and some things that I've gone through. And like I said, it was just a moment of reflection, but I had to ask myself a serious question, and that was, am I happy? And am I where I want to be at this stage of my life? And the second question is the one that I found myself kind of struggling with. And what I did, I focused on my frequency. What type of frequency am I operating on? Believe it or not, I think your frequency, or as some people call it, your vibrational energy, plays a major role in your life. And there's this thing called a map of consciousness. But what it does is that it defines a range of consciousness. You see, at one end of the spectrum, you have the alpha. And then on the other end, you have the omega. And the alpha part of it starts with shame, and then it finishes with enlightenment, which is the ultimate state of consciousness. In between, you have things like anger, acceptance, guilt, pride, courage, reason, peace, love, and joy. The last few brings you to that ultimate state. But anyway, I came to understand how important it is for us to raise our frequencies in order to live a more positive and meaningful life. So how do we begin to operate on a different frequency in our lives? Well, before we get into it, though, just kind of loop back around. Like I said, I want to thank everybody for wishing me a happy birthday again. I had some people over, and it was Saturday. We watched UFC and had some drinks. It was cool. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And then yesterday, my wife took me out to do the sip and paint, which was pretty cool. It was something kind of laid back. But yeah, definitely. It was something that it required me to kind of sit back and focus and reflect on, where I want to be and kind of look at the journey so far and try to plan for the future and, again, just be a better version of myself. But before I get into it, this beat that I did, I think I'm going to try to play this beat. Yeah, I'm going to let that ride out in the background. But anyway, how do we begin to operate on a different frequency in our lives? And one of the first things that came to my mind was that we have to be mindful. And what I mean by being mindful is that we need to be more conscious of who we allow around us. Environments dictate our moods, and that's something that I really believe in. Because people that operate on a lower frequency than us, they tend to pull us in their direction, and we get swallowed up by their alpha frequencies. These frequencies, like I said, include shame, guilt, apathy, grief, and anger. So you have to look around you and ask yourself the question, am I in a toxic environment or around people who bring me down? When you become mindful of your surroundings and the frequencies involved, understand that you have the power to change them. You have the power to change your reality and raise your frequency to a much higher level. Because if you don't, then you'll be expected to react and behave as the same way you've always done in the past. And this makes it extremely difficult to break through and become a better person. When there's something around you that makes you feel a certain way, don't be afraid to make changes if you have to. And sometimes that means cutting off the things and people that bring you into a toxic place or in a toxic mood. Releasing the low frequencies and negative emotions will help to bring you closer to being a better version of yourself. Now, this next one is, again, be mindful. And I say that again because we always got to be mindful of what we're doing and who's around us. But this time, be mindful of your thoughts. How we talk and think about ourselves have a huge impact on our frequency levels. Our thoughts are what becomes our realities. Your thoughts, your words, your actions, they can all transform your reality. That's why it's so important to raise your frequency levels to achieve a much better reality in our lives. So pay attention to the way you talk about yourself and the way you talk about other people. And speaking of talking, stop talking about what you don't have. Stop complaining. Stop talking about other people. Stop wasting time and energy on things that don't matter. Instead, focus that energy on radical actions. Let go of the constant negatives. Operating on low frequencies sends us into this downward spiral, and we find ourselves losing control, and sometimes it's often hard to recover from. But one thing that we can't afford to do is wallow in a never-ending sea of complaints. Now, I don't think this next one is anything new, but I think it's often overlooked, and that is checking in with ourselves. And it's, like I said, it's something that we forget about. And many of us, we live busy lives. There can be other loved ones that we have to check on and make sure they're okay. So it's easy to forget about ourselves and get caught up in all these things. But when you notice this happening, it's important to stop and reconnect with yourself. We get so lost in the daily routines, we don't even realize what frequency we're operating on. Left unchecked, and it could lead to some serious issues later on down the road. Once you stop checking on yourself, nothing else can work. So when you check on yourself, make sure you're taking note of how you feel. If you find yourself operating on a low frequency, try to correct it immediately. You want to operate on the highest frequency as possible. Now, I wanted to circle back to when I was talking about being mindful of our environments and who we allow around us. Now, this next one kind of ties into that, and that is high frequency relationships. In order to operate on a different frequency, we have to work to build and maintain high frequency relationships. All our relationships that we have must be of a high frequency. If it's not, then what's the point? What's the point of having a relationship with someone who puts you down instead of lifting you up? You want your relationships to vibe high, and that means you want to be around people who believe in you. It may be tempting to succumb to lower level frequencies because they're so easy to fall into. It doesn't take much effort to be around people who operate on lower frequencies. All it takes is one person saying something negative in order to taint your positive high frequency vibes. So as we continue to get through these times, remember that we have the power to control our frequencies. Don't allow someone or something to drive you to fall into that lower end of the frequency spectrum. Hate, anger, hopelessness, helplessness, and fear are all low frequency emotions. We can't allow that to operate us or run our lives. Toxic frequencies, they won't do us any good, and they don't move us forward. All they do is allow us to sit and soak in them, and soaking in toxic frequencies for long periods eventually makes our lives miserable. And life's just too short to be walking around miserable. So that's been this week's episode. I just wanted to kind of get that out and just, something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of days. Like I said, just had a good birthday party on Saturday. It wasn't really a party, just kind of a little get together, but it was with, some people that actually, operate on higher frequencies, and it felt good. So thanks again for all the birthday wishes, and as always, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.